right, thank you very much for this introduction. Now we have our guest speakers speaking, giving a speech, each one followed by discussion. Thank you. Ms. Ishida.
皆様こんにちは。私は大阪弁護士会の会長をしております石田典子と申します。
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ishida Noriko, and I'm a president of Osaka Bar Association.
今ご覧いただきました DVD は大阪弁護士会の死刑廃止検討プロジェクトチームの方で作成したものです。
The video you watched now was a product of the activities of the Osaka Bar Association's project team to discuss the abolition of the death penalty.
この DVD の作成の目的、そしてその内容についてはこの後死刑廃止プロジェクトチームのメンバーの方から説明させていただきますが、その前に少し大阪弁護士会の紹介をさせていただきます。
The purpose and the content of the video will be explained by the committee members later on. And before then, I will briefly explain about the Osaka Bar Association in its activities.
日本には日本弁護士連合会というのがございまして、その下に52の弁護士会がございます。
In Japan, there are 52 local bar associations, and all of them, yeah.
日本の弁護士は強制加入ですので、どこかの弁護士会に所属して弁護士としての活動をすることになります。
All of the practicing lawyers in Japan have to belong to the local bar associations.
大阪弁護士会は大阪府にあります。
Osaka Bar Association is located in Osaka Prefecture.
会員数は現在約4115名です。
The Osaka Bar Association has its individual members. The number is 4,115 members.
大阪弁護士会は、1880年に設立されまして、今日までに134年の歴史があります。
Osaka Bar Association was founded in 1818, so it has the history of 134 years.
私はこの4月に弁護士会の会長になりましたが、大阪弁護士会としては初めて女性会長ということになります。
I took the office as president of OBA in April this year, and I am the very first female president of OBA throughout its history.
皆さんのお手元の方にこの大阪弁護士会の紹介のパンフレットがあると思いますので、これを見ていただけますでしょうか。
Now you have this pamphlet leaflets of the Osaka Bar Associations, and please look at this.
大阪弁護士会の建物はこの表紙の右側の方です。
You can see the building of the Osaka Bar Associations on the right side of this place with the booklet.
宮殿のような建物がありますが、これは中央公会堂でして弁護士会の建物では残念ながらあります。
The building which seems to like a palace, but it's not, unfortunately, the building of the OBA.
表紙から2枚目をめくっていただきますと、弁護士会の紹介がありますが、我々は基本的人権の擁護と社会正義の実現のために活動をしております。
On the back page of the second sheet here, the activities of the Osaka Bar Association are described, and we are working to protect fundamental human rights and achieve social justice.
大阪弁護士会には80の委員会とプロジェクトチームがあります。
Osaka Bar Association has 80 committees and project teams.
ここにはその一部のみを紹介しておりますが、死刑廃止検討プロジェクトチームというのはその80のうちの一つの 活動です。
So the committees on the list of this page are not conclusive, but the project team to discuss the abolition of the death penalty, one of these OBA's committee and project teams.
私たち大阪弁護士会はご覧いただきました DVD を元にして、死刑廃止の問題について、議論を広めていきたいと思っております。
Based on the video we showed today, the Osaka Bar Association would like to perform the activities of to discuss the issue of the death penalty.
それでは内容につきましてはプロジェクトチームのメンバーの方から説明させていただきます。
Next, our committee members will introduce the content and the activities of the project team.
金子武史です。
My name is Kaneko Takeshi.
大阪弁護士会の死刑廃止検討プロジェクトチームの委員長をしております。
I'm a chairperson of the Osaka Bar Association's project team to discuss the abolition of the death penalty.
このプロジェクトチームは2012年の7月に大阪弁護士会に設置され、日本の死刑問題、死刑と終身刑の研究、そして死刑事件の弁護について研究し、シンポジウム等をしてきました。
This project team was created by Osaka Bar Association in July 2012. So far, the project team has conducted study on the issues surrounding the death penalty, including death penalty and life imprisonment with possibility of parole, and criminal defense in capital cases, and has organized symposia on these issues.
このプロジェクトチームの活動の一環として、公死刑を考えるというこの DVD を制作しました。
As part of the activities of the project team, we produced a video titled A Consideration of Judicial Hanging.
日本の法務省は死刑執行である公死刑というものの実態を明らかにしません。
Japan's Ministry of Justice never reveals the realities of judicial hanging.
そこで公死刑のメカニズムを明らかにし、公死刑が残虐な刑罰ではないのかという問いかけを社会にしたものであります。
Therefore, we have decided to clearly show the mechanism of judicial hanging and pose a question to the society by asking whether judicial hanging is a cruel punishment or not.
2014年の1月にこの DVD の日本語版が完成し、世間から大きな反響を及びました。各地からの貸し出しや上映のオファーが来ております。
In January 2014, the original Japanese version of this video was produced, and the video provoked a public response, and we have received a number of requests for the loan or the screening of the video.
そこでこの DVD の英語訳が必要ではないかということで、2014年の8月にこれを完成しました。これを海外に向けて発信できればと考え、この上映会を企画したものであります。
Thus, we recognize the necessity of translation of the video, and in August this year, translation of the video from Japanese into English was completed, and we plan today's event so that we can send our message overseas.
資料を用意しました。資料1は、日本の戦後の死刑判決と死刑執行の推移であります。
For your reference, we've prepared materials. Material number 1, 資料1, shows changes in the number of death sentences and executions after the World War II.
資料2は死刑の執行の数とまだ執行されていない死刑囚の数です。
Material number 2, 資料2, shows the number of executions and death row inmates whose death sentences were finalized but not executed.
棒グラフが死刑執行された数で右のメモリで見ていただきます。
Bar graph show the number of death sentences indicated by a scale on the left side.
死刑執行されていない死刑囚の数で左のメモリで見てください。
And the broken line is the number of the death row inmates waiting for executions at the end of each year, indicated by a scale on the right.
今日現在、死刑が執行されていない死刑囚は127名です。
As of today, the number of prisoners whose sentences were confirmed but not executed is 127.
その中には2014年3月27日に再審請求によ中ですけれども釈放された袴田巌さんも含まれています。
This number includes Mr. Hakamada Iwao, who was released on March 27 this year during his pending retrial process.
以上です。
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Yukihiro Masaki. Masaki is my family name. I will speak in English. As you saw, the video is about the unconstitutionality of hanging as the method of execution. That is, whether hanging is a cruel punishment or not, which is prohibited by the Constitution of Japan. I want to talk about 3 points. 1, why we take up the cruelty of hanging. 2, why we made the video first in Japanese. And 3, why we made the video in English. Number 1, why we take up the cruelty of hanging. Mr. Goto sitting next to me and I are the members of the defense team for the so-called Osaka Pachinko Parlor arson case. Mr. Goto is the chief defense lawyer and I am the second chair. There are 4 members in all. When we were appointed as the defense lawyers for the defendant, it was obvious to us that the prosecution would ask for death penalty for the defendant at the end of the trial. We decided to argue the unconstitutionality of death penalty as one of the defense strategies. But the problem was how we should argue the unconstitutionality. Since the implementation of the Constitution of Japan after World War II, numerous lawyers had argued the unconstitutionality of death penalty itself. Each one of them had been declined, rejected by the Supreme Court of Japan. The most famous one is the 1948 ruling in which the Supreme Court clearly declared that the death penalty itself is not unconstitutional. Every decision of the courts in Japan has followed the same path. It was obvious to us as well that arguing the unconstitutionality of death penalty itself would lead us nowhere. We paid attention to the method of execution. In Japan, the Article 11 of the Japanese Penal Code, enacted in 1907, stipulates as follows: the death penalty shall be executed by hanging at a penal institution. So, in Japan, hanging is the only method of execution by the law. It is true that on April 6, 1955, approximately 60 years ago, the Supreme Court of Japan had already ruled that judicial hanging is not a cruel punishment. But as we study judicial hanging as the method of execution, we noticed that there are many botched executions. Some of the condemned suffered very long before they died. Most brutal examples were deaths caused by decapitation. At the same time, as we scrutinized the reasoning of the 1955 Supreme Court ruling, we noticed that there were defects from the viewpoint of forensic science. The ruling was based on the expert opinion of Dr. Furuhata, who was thought to be the most prestigious forensic scientist back then. But his opinion was only based on the assumption that when hanging is executed in the most ideal manner. Of course, hanging cannot always be carried out in the most ideal manner. In order to prove this, and in order to prove how the death of the condemned occurs from the forensic science point of view, we asked Dr. Rabel from Austria to testify in the trial of the Osaka pachinko parlor arson case. The part of the video concerning the forensic science is a faithful representation of Dr. Rabel's testimony in court in Osaka. Another problem of the judicial hanging in Japan is that the details of the executions are strictly hidden, neither disclosed to the family members of the condemned or the victims, nor to the public. So it is quite difficult to judge whether the executions are brutal or not from the viewpoint of observers. We looked for a person who actually saw the execution, and we finally found Mr. Tsuchimoto, who is a former prosecutor. He had the experience of observing the execution of hanging as part of his job as a prosecutor. We also asked him to testify in court. Part of the contents of the video is based on his testimony. And number two, why we made the video first in Japanese. As we said a little earlier, the details of judicial hanging is hidden from the eyes of the Japanese people. People are not informed of how judicial hanging is carried out, what may happen during the execution, how the death of the condemned occurs, and so on. But still, the government of Japan says that the death penalty is supported more than 80% of the Japanese people. How can a person say yes or no to an institution, the contents of which he or she does not know? That is why we felt the necessity to produce the video. And number three, why we made the video in English. As we continue to study the death penalty in more details, we noticed that some people in Japan, especially those people who came from EU countries, do not know that Japan has death penalty and or the death penalty is executed by hanging. We felt the necessity to let those people know about the situation of death penalty in Japan. Also, we noticed that there are countries other than Japan where they have judicial hanging. The problem they have might be the same as we do in Japan. Our research might be of some help to those people of those countries. That is why we made the video in English. Mr. Goto will add some explanation to mine. Thank you very much.
いいですか。少しだけ付け加えます。絞首刑によって首が切れるというようなことが起こる だから残虐だ、憲法に違反しているという主張はパチンコ店の事件で初めてしたわけではありません。
Our argument that by the judicial hanging, decapitation might happen, and it violates our constitution, which prohibits cruel punishment, is not the first one made in the trial.
オウム事件の被告人の一人である中川智正さんの事件の最高裁で主張しました。
We made the same arguments during the proceedings at the Supreme Court of Japan and the trial of Mr. Nakagawa Tomomasa, who is one of the members of Omu Shinrikyo Cultist Group.
中川さんの判決は2011年11月にありました。
The ruling was given in November 2011.
裁判所は何も応答しませんでした。
The Supreme Court made no response to our argument.
パチンコ店の事件では中川さんの事件の主張をさらに推し進めました。
In Osaka pachinko parlor case, we made further arguments based on the Nakagawa's case.
それとオーストリアのラブル博士を証人としてこの日本の法廷で証言してもらいました。
Plus, we called Dr. Rubble from Austria as an expert witness.
元検察官の土本さんに証言をしてもらいました。
Emeritus Professor Tsuchimoto also testified at the trial.
これが中川さんの裁判の時から前進した点です。
This is the progress from the trial of Mr. Tomomasa Nakagawa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we open the floor. Thank you very much for your presentations. We open the floor for question and answers. Please proceed to the mic in front and state your name and affiliation before you ask.
フランス10というインターネットテレビジョンの記者の及川と申します。質問2点ほどしたいと思います。1つ目の質問は、死刑廃止というのは民主主義のプロセス、つまり選挙を経て、実現されるべきだと思いますが、一旦ここでじゃあ区切ります。
I'm from France 10, and I have two questions. Number one, abolition should be achieved through the democratic process, and that is the election.
と申しますのは、ご承知の通りフランスは1982年に、死刑廃止をしました。これは81年の大統領選挙でフランソワ・ミッテランが、公約をしたからです。当時3人の候補者がいて、1人現職のジスカール・デシタンは死刑存置に賛成でした。ジャック・シラクさんは、国民投票に死刑制度の存置を国民投票で問うと言いました。そして、ミッテラン候補は、最後のテレビの演説でも自分は選挙を当選したら死刑を廃止すると明確に言いました。日本でもこのように明確に死刑廃止を選挙で問うべきだとお考えなのかということ。すみません。
In France, the death penalty was abolished in 1982, followed by the election held in 1981. And at that time, we had three candidates as presidency. And one was Mr. Giscard d'Estaing, and who was for the death penalty. And the second one, Mr. Chirac, said that the abolition, the issue of abolition, should be decided by the public poll. And Mitterrand, the third one, said that if he wins the election, he will abolish the death penalty. So, do you think that basically the abolition should be achieved through the democratic process?
まず申し上げておかなければならないことは、日本の弁護士会は死刑廃止でも存置でもありません。
First of all, we have to say that Japanese bar associations are not in the position in favor of the death penalty, nor against the death penalty.
死刑を執行停止して、そしてみんなで考えようではないかと、議論しようではないかというところ、そして死刑廃止についても考えていこうではないかという意見です。
Our position is the first moratorium should be implemented, and then we should discuss the issues, including the abolition of the death penalty.
と言いますのも、日本の弁護士会は先ほど石田会長が言われたように強制加入団体であります。
Because all the practicing lawyers have to belong to the bar associations.
さまざまな考え方の人がいます。で、今のところ合意は死刑執行停止、そして死刑廃止を考えていこうではないかという段階であります。
There are people with various different opinions, but we agreed that we should implement moratorium and discuss the issue of the death penalty.
そのためには現実の死刑が日本の死刑がどのように執行されているのか、その現実をみんなが明らかになった上で議論していこうではないかという意見です。
In order to do so, the actual mechanism, the method of the execution should be revealed, and all of us should know the realities of the death penalty.
日本語版の DVD を作ったのも皆さんに今の死刑の実態を知ってほしいからです。
The reason why I produced the original Japanese version of the video is that we would like the public to know the realities of the death penalty.
その上で国民といいますか、皆さんがどう考えるかということを見てみたいというわけではありませんけれども、そういう形になっていくだろうと思います。
Upon watching, receiving such information, how the Japanese public will consider the issue of the death penalty. This is our aim.
Sorry, we have more questions. He has follow-up.
たびたび失礼します。もう一点、今の立場ですと、志らくさんのように、国民的議論を経て、それで国民投票した上でもし死刑が支持されたならば、死刑は存置されるというお立場でしょうか。ちょっと言って。
So, given the explanation, is it correct that just like Mr. Chirac in France, do you think that if as a result of the national court vote, the result of the vote if the result of the poll were in favor of retention, and then if your position is that you respect the results or not?
ちょっと一つ、私自身の立場を言えば、これは2007年、フランス共和国憲法が死刑を永久廃止したときに、シラク大統領がこんなことを言って、この立場に私は賛成です。正義が糾弾するものと同じ武器を使用する正義を拒否すると、私自身はこういう立場でございます。以上です。
his position is that he supports the position of Mr. Chirac, who said in 2007, when France constitutionally prohibited the death penalty, he said what the justice renounce should be denounced as a method of the method of the tools to denounce something.
お答えしますね。我々は今質問になったようなことを考えていません。今の時点では考えていないということです。我々に最も関心のあるのは、日本の死刑は公主刑である。その公主刑がどのようにして執行されるか、それによって何が起こるか、それを知らないままに議論をしている。それが良くない。だからそこから議論を始めよう。そういうことです。私自身は明確な死刑廃止を希望するものです。だけれども、そういうふうに思っていない人も含めて、正しい情報、事実、何が起こっているかということを分かった上で議論をしなければならないんではないか、そういう立場です。
We are not thinking about such issues at all. Actually, our concern is that how the judicial hanging will be executed and what happens during the executions. Without knowing these realities, it is not good for us to discuss the issue of the death penalty. I myself am a firm opponent of the death penalty, but including the people, those who are not against the death penalty, we should discuss the issue of the death penalty with sufficient information on realities.
Uh, 明治23年、徳富祖法総監、国民新聞論説委の藤田と申します。今、後藤さんのお話があったので、もしかするとこの質問は、不適切かもしれませんが、2点ちょっとお伺いしたいなということがありまして、1点はですね、例えば仮に今、裁判を廃止した場合ですね、過程で裁判が廃止されたという過程で考えたときにですね、これまでに冤罪訴訟がある袴田さんのようなケースは別でしょうが、ここだけでもいいですけどね、これまでに死刑判決を受けた方はいずれにしても死刑に処さないとならないですね。というのが一つ目の質問ですけども、これだけでいいです。長くなりました、はい。
My name is Fujita, and my question is, those who have been already given the death sentences and these sentences have been already confirmed should be executed, even if ultimately the abolition was achieved. This is my question.
おそらくはですね、死刑は執行されないことになります。なぜならば、その死刑の執行停止という制度があります。刑の執行停止という程度があるからです。死刑が廃止されているのに、廃止された死刑を過去に死刑判決を受けたからといって執行されるということは多分ですね、ない。個別的に執行停止されるか、全体的に執行停止されるかは別にして執行停止されるでしょう。
In my opinion, probably death sentences will not be executed anymore after the abolition of the death penalty, because we have a system of stay of execution. I'm not sure if each individual death sentences will be suspended or generally all the death sentences will be suspended. But anyway, the executions will not be executed.
追加してお話ししておきたいことがあります。我々は絞首刑を今問題にしています。ビデオも。そうするとこういう疑問があります。絞首刑が悪いけれども他の刑の執行方法ならいいんかと、死刑はいいんか、こういう疑問が当然起こります。しかし絞首刑が残虐であるということになればどうなるかですね。それは絞首刑が残虐である憲法に違反すれば法律を変えなければなりません。なぜならば法律で刑の執行は絞首刑によると定められているからです。そうすると国会の場でなぜ絞首刑が残虐であるのか、他の刑がなぜ残虐でないのかという議論を始めなければなりません。そうするとその結果地盤が動く、そういうふうに考えています。
I would like to add one more thing. Now we are raising the issue of the judicial hanging, but one may pose a question that do you support any other methods of execution? But if the method of judicial hanging is cruel, we need to change our law, legislation, because it is the law which stipulates that the execution method is judicial hanging. Therefore, in the diet, the discussion, argument should be made on the method of the executions. So, by such arguments in the diet, maybe our basis of the discussion or argument will be changed, and we might approach another dimension of the discussion.
Right. Yes, please.
Sonja Blaschke, I'm a freelance journalist from Germany, and I would like to know if your effort to show that hanging is cruel, and it's also kind of, I think, an effort to show that death penalty should be abolished. Is there any sort of concerted effort in Japan going on between, for example, your group and maybe other bar associations that have similar project teams and a number of NGOs that are also trying to abolish the death penalty? Is there any kind of cooperation? Thank you.
皆さん今、残虐性ある廃止の問題ということをなさっているわけですけれども、こういう、活動が成功していくことによって日本の他の例えば弁護士会であるとか、あるいは市民社会のグループであるとかと、そういうところと一緒になって何かをやる、というようなことというのはあるんでしょうか。
いや、まさにそういうことを我々は今やりつつあります。例えば日弁連で市民集会なんかをするときにビデオを映して、あるいは弁護士会の他の地域に日弁連から出かけていって、この話をしたりして広めています。
So what you asked is exactly what we are planning to do for now. For example, to have a video screening at the civil meetings at the nationwide, or to show the videos at the Japan Federation Bar Associations.
先ほど日弁連っていう話が出ましたが、弁護士会の連合体であります 日弁連には各地の弁護士会から委員が出てきていて、それで活動しています。
When it comes to the JFBA, Japan Federation of Bar Associations, JFBA is a coalition body of each local bar association, and as from each local bar association, many individual lawyers join the JFBA's committee.
そこの委員を通じて各地の弁護士会にこの DVD を上映してもらうなりして広げていきたいと思っています。
So through such each individual members, lawyer members from local bar association, we would like to disseminate the information of the video and to discuss, we'd like to raise the issue of the death penalty.
弁護士 .com ニュースというインターネットのメディアの金松と申します。死刑制度の存廃については、内閣府、政府による世論調査というのがこれまで9回ほど行われてきておりますが、その世論調査の結果は、死刑を存続すべきという意見が大勢を占めています。しかも、最近では、増加する傾向が見られます。で他の世論調査やですね、あと一般的な肌感覚としても、内閣府の調査ほどでないにしてもやはり存続すべきという人たちが国民の中では多いのではないかという感じがしています。でそれについて2つ質問なんですが、1つは、なぜ、日本の国民はそのように死刑を存続すべきだと考える人たちが多いのか。でそのようなそれが1つ目で、2つ目は、そのような状況について、どのように考えてどのようにアクションをしていったらいいとお考えでしょうか。
My name is Kanematsu. In Japan, about on whether to abolish the death penalty or not, the government's cabinet office conducts a survey, and according to the recent survey conducted in 2007, the vast majority of the respondents say that they are in favor of the retention of the death penalty. And with reference to other sort of opinion surveys, it seems that the people who are in favor of the death penalty are increasing. So thus, I have two questions. Why so Japanese citizens, many Japanese citizens support the death penalty? And number two, about this point, what is your opinion? And how we should react to against these people?
一つ目の質問ですが、答えは2つです。一つは統計のそのアンケートの取り方、世論調査に問題があると思います。しかしそれにしても日本の多くの国民が死刑存置に票を投じているということは確かでしょう。その一つの大きな原因が死刑によって何が起こるかということを知らされていないからだと考えています。高校生に、例えば高校生にですよ、死刑に存置に賛成か反対かを初めに言わせますよね。その後で絞首刑によって行われる、その絞首刑がどんなものであるか、どんなことが起こるかという話をした。その後でもう一度アンケートをすると、その数値は明らかに変わります。そういう研究をした人がいます。基本的にはそれと同じだと思います。それが一つ目の質問です。
My answer to the first question is First of all, the methods of the survey is distorted, problematic. But even so, it is true that so many people support the death penalty. I think one of its main reasons is that many people are not informed of the realities, what happened in the executions. For example, when we asked the question of whether to support the death penalty or not to the high school students, and many of them responded in favor of the death penalty. But after that, if we give the sufficient information on the execution, what actually happened in the executions, and then when we again poses the same questions as before, the response of the students are totally different ones.
2つ目の質問に対する答えはこうです。我々は魔法の杖を持っていません。今やろうとしている死刑の実態をできるだけ知らせること、それが我々に課せられたその義務でありできることです。それをまず全力を挙げてやりたいとこう考えています。
My answer to the second question is that we do not have magic bullet. So what we can do is to inform the realities of the execution, death penalty, to inform the information as widely as possible. And we are going to make our effort as much as possible in our capacity.
Thank you.
日本の法制度をちょっと説明します。日本には死刑と無期懲役しかありません。終身刑、EU なりアメリカ内にある終身刑というものがありません。そうするとそれを作ることについて日本の国民はどうかってことも聞かれていません。だからそれがアンケートの結果で、その終身刑ができたときにどうなるのかってことについて、やはり私たちの制度導入等についてはいろいろ考えていかなければならないことではないかと思っています。
I will talk a little bit about our legal systems. In Japan, we have only the death penalty and life imprisonment with possibility of parole. And in other words, we do not have life imprisonment without any possibility of parole. So by creation of introducing the life without any possibility of parole, the response of the public may be changed, but it is reality that the respondents to the public opinion survey are not given such questions. So I think it is also important that if we have the life imprisonment without possibility of parole, that would be as an alternative to the death penalty, that would create another dimension for our discussion.
Thank you. If I would like to ask a question myself. You are focusing on that you want to know more about what happens during the hanging and so on. And you based your strategy on this, like you want the government to explain more what's happening. So you think the public opinion, after they know this, they will change their mind. But I don't know what you want, information, what kind of information you want. Because it's death penalty, so it's like they are taking somebody and hanging the person. So what information do you want other than this? Of course, they will be like taking the person and walking and covering head. I don't understand what kind of information more you want And of course, the death penalty is painful regardless. Even the feeling of somebody going to the death penalty, this is horrible torture for any human. And maybe some people, I heard, they have heart attack before that. So this is known information for everybody. It's not really something the government has to tell you about, so you based your strategy on this. So do you think you should be more clear and you say I am against the death penalty, or I think there should be something else? Because you said, I think Ms. Ishida said, we are not against nor for the death penalty. So this is very gray area. It might also, don't you think this might weaken your position? Thank you.
皆さんはその、公主権によって死刑によって何が起きるのかということを、明らかにして、それを、公衆、それによって、市民の意見も変えていこうということなんですけれども、こういうビデオに描かれているようなこと以外にどんな情報を、提供していこうというふうに思っているんでしょうか。確かに、その死刑というそのひどい苦しみ、拷問的なもの、そういったものがビデオに含まれているわけなんですけれども、その皆さん方の立場という、弁護士会の立場というのは、あくまでそのグレー、その死刑について廃止なのか存置なのかということについては、はっきりしていない、ということなので、こういうことについてもっとはっきり言っていくというような、そういうお考えはあるんでしょうか。
私たちは今現在やられている死刑の執行方法についてこういう DVD を作りました。でその他にじゃあ現実の死刑についてさまざまな、死刑による効果、そして弊害、そして現実に死刑を言い渡された人がどう考えていい、どういう状況にあるのか、そういうことについては一切といいますか、ほとんど情報が開示されていません。
We produced a video on the reality of the executions, but apart from the content of the video, there are many other arguments about the death penalty. For example, the effects of the executions, or the deficiencies of the executions, or the opinions or ideas of the people, those sentenced to death, or their living environment, and so on. So on these issues, there is no information available.
そういうことをさまざまな情報を明らかにしていって、一つ一つ議論をして積み重ねていって結論を出さなければならないのではないかというふうに思っています。
So we need to reveal every piece of such information and to make a discussion on such issues step by step. This is absolutely necessary, I think.
もう一つだけ、その弁護士会が死刑廃止か死刑存置かについてはいろんな考えの人がいるにしても、刑事弁護で死刑求刑された被告人を一人でも多く救う死刑にしないというそういう方針ではほぼ一致するんではないか。そのために弁護士会内部で研修を強めるということも同時にやっています。
The JFBA members' opinion on the whether to abolish the death penalty are divided. But even so, we agreed that we should reduce the number of the people who are sentenced to death. So, and currently, we are giving the training seminars on capital defense as an activities of bar associations.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your work in creating and translating that DVD for our information and education. My name is Chris Pitts. I'm an associate member of the club and a volunteer member of Amnesty International Japan. Amnesty International, as you know, is an organization that opposes the death penalty in all cases, and I vigorously support that policy. I wanted to ask you about tendencies and trends, by which I mean that worldwide countries are abolishing the death penalty, and to my knowledge, not one country that has abolished the death penalty in the last 40 years has brought it back. Even within the United States, where some states still retain the death penalty, more and more states are abolishing the death penalty, and none of them have reintroduced it after abolishing it. And as far as I know, the abolition of the death penalty is not something that's driven by popular sentiment or by referendum. In every case, as far as I know, the death penalty has been abolished by the national government, a democratically elected government in most cases, and perhaps even where majority opinion would still oppose the abolition of the death penalty. Here in Japan, we have, I think, the same kind of trend, but I'd like to hear your opinion about the trend of the thinking amongst Japanese lawyers, members of Japanese bar associations, about the need to abolish the death penalty. And also the Diet Group. I believe that there is a Diet Group, a group of Diet members of different parties who oppose the death penalty, would like to see the death penalty abolished. Is that group growing? Is it becoming more influential? Do you have any information about that? Thank you.
The first question about the Japanese member. Okay, no. このクラブのアソシエイトメンバーのクリス・ペースと言います。私はアムネスティ日本のボランティアでもあります。で、世界中ではその死刑廃止国がどんどん増えているという傾向があって、過去40年間で死刑を廃止した後、さらに復活した再導入したという国はありませんし、アメリカでも死刑廃止州が増えていて、しかもその廃止した後復活したというところはありません。で、むしろその死刑の廃止というのはその国民投票ですとか、その一般公衆の感情というものによって導かれるのではなくて、民主的な政府によって達成されるものだと考えます。で、たとえ多数が支持をしたとしてもそれによって決まるものではないというふうに考えます。で、ところで、例えば、日本にはその日弁連のメンバーがいて、あるいはその国会の中には超党派の議員連盟というものがあるわけなんですけれども、こういったメンバーというのはその死刑廃止賛成のメンバーというのは増加しているんでしょうか。 So, can I answer? Unfortunately, the members of the Diet Members League against the death penalty is decreasing. At some point, there are maybe 120, more than 120 or 30 members who joined the Diet Members League. But now it is reportedly said there are only 30 members. So I strongly recommend you to check the exact numbers to request in the poison required to the office of Mr. Shizuka Kamei Shizuka, the president of the Diet Members League. 弁護士会の中ではどうでしょうか。Unfortunately, even in the Japanese bar associations, we believe that the members who support the death penalty are increasing, especially among the young generation, young lawyers. There are many intentionists we can find. Thank you.
Thanks, Siegfried. This will be the last question about death penalty, I think.
Siegfried Middle, freelancer from Germany. Has this to do with the decreasing number of the the Diet member against the death penalty has to do with the conservative government. Now, with a kind of a trend of conservative thinking in the government, perhaps, and also in the society. I think if I see the number of executed people in the last 2 years since the new government is in place, I think it increased. So, is there a kind of is this a kind of a trend in the government and or in the also the diet? That's a diet, or also in the member of the bar association. Does the government change this kind of thinking perhaps in the society, thinking about death penalty?
You mean that the change of the attitude of the government reflects in the public sentiment or tendency?
In the diet and perhaps in the society or in the bar association.
今のお話聞くと死刑廃止議連のメンバーは減っているし、その弁護士会の中でもそういう状況があるということで、他方でその政治の方を見ると、その政府の保守化というのが進んでいて、自民党政権、今の政権になってから、データを見ますと死刑の執行数も増加しています。でそういった傾向っていうのは、国会の状況、あるいは弁護士会の状況というものを、表していると、関連しているというふうにお考えですか？ Exactly, yes. I agree.
Okay. So the conservative Japan will have more people on the death row. That's the conclusion. Thank you very much for coming today. And I would like to thank very much our team of lawyers here, presented very impressive cases. And I would like to extend special thanks for Ms. Michael Dagosari, who volunteered to interpret and let us understand the content in English. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please give a big hand to our guests and have a nice evening. Thank you.